Hello everyone, my name is Yuri Kasdorp from Mouse, and we are here at Daytona. I think my favorite track to race on iRacing. Hotlapping, maybe not as much fun with the long straights, but it always produces some great racing, some great tactics, almost like cycling tactics, because it's so good to be behind someone to save that extra bit of fuel and work together with draft as well. It just always creates some great racing, I think. So to get into those races, though, you need to have a good qualifying, and how to do that, we go over that right now. All right, so here we are starting our lap in a bit of an unusual car, but this car has very nice traction, which is something you definitely need around this track. So we're here for the start of the Daytona season. Got the sprint week into next week IMSA, and then of course on the weekend we have the Daytona 24, the biggest special event of the year. And coming up to the first corner, you want to go to the outside, brake at the white line, but make sure you keep it a bit tight. You don't want to do the GTP line from the outside, and most cars, some cars it works in GT as well. Brake from the left side into turn 2, focus on that exit, and use that traction that we have in the Corvette. And keep it tight in the kink here to brake from the left side. Use that traction again. Like all the way from the right side, you want the tire on the curb. Throttle early here, tracking out a bit wide. Get a better exit onto the straight. And then we got probably the trickiest part of the track coming up, the bus stop. And it's tricky because we're running this low wing, and the rear is always going to be a bit unstable, like before the one. Keep it tight. See, the rear wants to step out at every opportunity it can, because we're running this low wing. And then we only have the big run to the line left. And that's why it's really important to get a good exit from the chicane. Really focus on the exit speed rather than the speed through the corner. And then when we do qualifying lap, you can run on the inside here to end your run. And that's the lap around Daytona. Right, so let's have a bit of a closer look from the outside cam here. So we're looking for turn 1 to find a way to brake as much as we can in a straight line to the apex all the way over there. But as you can see, there's a turn here. Some cars like to turn a bit while braking. For example, the McLaren or the Mercedes. In those cars, it's possible to brake in a straight line to the outside here. In most GT cars, we have to take the conventional line, which is we look to the outside wall here, we turn while the car's on throttle as much as we can, and then right as we hit this line on the track here, we start to brake, and we try to keep the wheel as straight as possible while slowing down. That means keep it as straight as possible, and you want to stay inside these white lines. The line with that worked for me in the McLaren is all the way to the cones here on the left side, and you use this and try to center for a good exit. And the reason that works is that that car likes to rotate a bit more on the brakes and struggles a lot on traction, which this car doesn't struggle with. So in most cars, you want to run like this. You want to run to this white line here, but this line in the middle here is very important, because the more we get towards the apex, the more it goes a bit in a triangle, the track. So we need to make sure that when we get close to the apex here, we're getting to this point of the track, and you can see as well where this transition is happening, and the car starts to turn more. It's really, really important that when you get to the apex here, you're not too far off the inside. If you're too long on the outside here, it's very, very hard to get to the inside. because again, it gets more and more off-cambered from the outside here. So you want to go from the outside and then aim for the wall on the inside. Looks a bit like this. You aim for these tires here, and then it opens up immediately afterwards and you hit the apex. But you always want to aim to be very close to these tires, even though there's a bit of grass. You naturally miss that bit of grass and follow the road. And here you want to keep the inside without going outside too early. Because if you go outside too early, again, the track is off camber on the outside. It has camber on the inside, so you want to follow this inside until we're at the exit here. Then, very important here, these curbs now are very, very high, so you don't want to run over them at all. So you can touch them, but don't go over this edge here. And same on the left side. And then we get to turn 2. And turn 2 has a couple issues, or a couple problems we have to solve. The biggest problem is that we're very close to the braking already, and it opens up a lot from the left. So there's a pit exit on the left side here. We want to get over to the left side as quick as possible, so that when we start braking, we're close to this white line on the left side here. And then again, we want to make sure that our car is straight when we start braking. That means we quickly want to go over to the left side, put the car straight, and then start braking. We don't want to brake from here to the outside, because then we get to a point here where our car's pointing here instead of pointing straight, and we have to do more of a turn. Or we have to turn while braking and we can't brake as hard. So try to brake as much in a straight line, and it is very tricky to find your braking point here. So for me, the braking point I have is a look at this point here on the right side, and when this disappears into my right monitor or off my middle screen, I start to brake. There's also a 100 marker on the right side, which you could use, but it's very, very far to the right side. So as you can see, you start to brake and you already don't see the 100 anymore on my brake marker. You could also use this point here on the road, this line, and brake just after this line. But it gets pretty tricky because you already passed the line, and if there's a car in front of you, you don't see it, obviously. One other thing could be this point here as a reference on the road where you get this edge. But you get the idea. You have to find something here where you want to start braking, and there's not really a point for me that uses it nicely. Then for the corner itself, I want to make sure that I'm not apexing too early. This is quite wide, which also works. You want to be a bit closer normally, but the big thing here is apexing very late and setting up for a good exit onto what is another quite long straight, and then running to the outside here again on the curb. Then we get this kink here where they're quite low on the wing, obviously for the big straights. So kink like this starts to become quite tricky on the rear. So you want to be very smooth with your steering inputs. Then bring the car over to the left side, and you want to make sure that we're not ending up on the track here. We're ending up on the track on the left side here. So we are facing our car to the left side. On the throttle, we want to face our car on the throttle. Then have a small turn to change the direction before we start braking. And then when our car is facing this direction, so not to this wall anymore, it's facing towards the inside, we start to brake. And I brake a bit before this edge here. And then we brake. We don't want to use the full prototype line to the outside here. I want to be at least one tire always to the inside of this marker here, with just the middle of the track. Get to the inside. You can even, with some cars, brake more to the inside in a straight line. Take the corner like a V, brake hard to the inside, get it turned, and immediately back power again. But you want to turn, and then the way you want to take this corner is you want to ignore the curb too much on the entry, but you want to follow it or be close to it all the way on the exit. So you want to follow it or have one tire right on the edge of the curb on the exit, so that we a nice exit from here. Then we get a corner where I see a lot of people lose a lot of time. If you put your car in the middle here, you're giving away a lot of free lap time. What we want to aim for is when we enter this left-hander, that our right side tires are on this bit of curb here. And of course, we want to brake in a straight line as well. That means I'm going early over to the right side. I'm turning here, and then I'm taking this tiny bit patch of grass here as well. Even with the new update, tiny patch of grass won't hurt your performance into the next corner. So we want to have our car pointing like this when we brake. We want to brake just before this tiny patch of grass. So the middle of my car is to the right side of the white line. It's not an off track. And I brake in a straight line, maybe even already a bit towards the apex. And I make sure that my right side tires end up on this curb here on the right side. So it looks a bit like this. And this way, when we're braking like this, you can see my car is already coming from the right side, and we're not going from the middle here, having to do a lot more to turn. You get a much better angle into the corner, which is very important. Get the car turned on the apex. You don't want to run too far right in the exit here, but you don't want to completely straight line it on the inside either. You want to get the car rotated mostly on the apex, then towards the middle of the road, and run it wide on the exit, because the wider we run it, a bit quicker we can go on throttle in. Let's straighten it up for the first long straight. Coming onto the chicane. And then the chicane is the part where I think you can easily gain or lose a couple tenths, or even half a second. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that our car is all the way to the right side, running parallel to the wall. Small tip I can give you is that you don't want to sort this out the last possible moment. You want to get your car running parallel to the wall quite early, so that you can just hold your wheel straight and focus on this point here and your braking point, without having to focus on getting your car to the right side close to the wall anymore. And the braking point, I look at the one here, and I look at this point here, which is it's like a yellow pole. Right after this yellow pole, when this leaves my peripheral vision, I start to brake. Lately, I'm using the one more than this pole because I'm braking tiny bit later with the current GT3 cars. So you want to use this. This one can especially be helpful if you're right behind someone, which is going to be the case quite often on a draft track like this. And then right before the one, slow down. And what helps here in a lot of cars, because again, we trim down the rear wing in a lot of these setups, is you want to shift down most of the times 2 gears, and you want to delay that second shift to get stability on entry into the bus stop here. So we come into the corner here. Let's go to the outside cam again. You want to be close to hitting this dirt on the left side here, and make sure that you're braking a lot before getting onto this. But the more you're turning here at the apex, the more you want to be off the brakes. And then in between the direction change, so you can see there's a bit here even where I'm not even on the brakes, where I'm trying to turn the most. And then when we get this direction change where the car is moving mostly straight, a couple of wheels straight, that's where I want to have another tap on the brake. And what this tap does is 2 things. One, it slows me down a bit more, so I can take the left hand a bit more. But more importantly, it puts the weight back on the front tires for this direction change. And it helps a lot with keeping tight in the middle part of the chicane, which is really important. So you want to brake and then have the weight on the nose of the car and have the car rotated, like you see, quite a lot to make sure that in the middle of the chicane, we're staying to the inside. If your car's all the way on the outside here, you're losing a lot of time. You have to slow down way too much. What we're aiming for here is keeping the car towards the inside, and we want to aim for right side tires on this white patch of the curb. So this patch of the curb we want to aim for, and then back on the power before we hit this third curb. If you have to be off the power until after this, you're losing too much back onto the oval. And then we got the very annoying off track here, where we go a bit on the top. And this one's very deceiving, especially if you change cars a bit. It runs on the outside of this curb in a straight line, imaginary line to this point here. And it is the middle of the car that is the limit. So when we try to draw this line straight, this line here to this point, You need to make sure that the middle of the car stays to the right side at this point to avoid the off-track. There's also slowdown, which happens, I think, if your right tires are all the way into the grass here, which is something you obviously want to avoid a lot in the race. It can cost you a lot in the race if you get a slowdown here. But for the qualifying, make sure the right side of the car is on the right side of this imaginary line. And again, we hit that by trying to keep the car tight through the corner, throttle early here, and make sure that you aim with the left side tires just a bit on the grass here. And then make sure that you also hold the car straight long enough that you account for this bit of grass here. It's very easy at this point here to straighten the car up too early, because we want to go here and get on off track, even though we were in the limits at this point here. So let's have a quick look in Delta here as well for the bus stop, because it is so important. So we want to come in, ease onto the brakes, because there's not a hard braking zone here, and then trail off slowly, and then make sure again we're off the brakes here, and we're turning the most, and the small tap on the brake, you see I go to about 35%. You don't go too aggressively, go up 35% and down again, and that really helps with getting the car turned through the chicane. You can see we're really tight on the line, and we start to apply the throttle before we hit to the third curb, and we keep that throttle all the way to the exit without going too wide on the exit. So the chicane, being able to go on throttle here, being able to avoid this off track, it's all in the braking and how you set it up. And trick here, or the thing that you have to focus on the most, is this small bit of braking and the release of brake over the first curb. That's where all the time is gonna be. Right, get back to the track. That's how you take the chicane, and then obviously we just have the straight left. And if you had a good exit, you can gain 1, 2, maybe even 3 tenths on the straight here by basically doing nothing, getting interest on a good bus stop. And that's a lap around Daytona, which we'll see a lot of in the next couple of weeks. Right, so there we go. We went over all the secrets on how to get those last couple tenths around Daytona. Lots of Daytona up ahead with the 24 and the IMSA next week as well. So I hope everyone learned something. Want to see more track guides like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I will see everyone next week for the next guides.